Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over your winter forecast for the year of 2020 to 21. This is actually the final and sixth winter forecast for the year of 2020 to 2021. So I've made already six of these and they've changed quite a lot over time as we've gotten new data and new information. If you want to learn where I'm really getting all this information from and what is really getting compiled into my forecast, go check out my early look at winter video that I posted just a couple of days ago, and you can go check that out. It goes in depth into all of the different factors. A lot of people just look at, you'll be surprised how many people just look at the La Nina, El Nino, Enso neutral, just look at that and say, well, if it's a La Nina, it's going to be like this. If it's an El Nino, it's going to look like that. It's not, that's really not how it works. You need to look at a few different factors, and that's what I did in that video, and that's how I got to the conclusion that I did. So I don't just look at one factor, I look at many factors, probably 6 or 7 different factors that go into my forecast. We're going to be going over temperature anomalies, precipitation anomaly, and overall forecast at the end of the video. So if you have any questions, by the way, leave a general location down below. So a city name, a county name, what part of a state you're in, what state you're in, just something that can help me give you a forecast for your area. So that'll really help me if you want to get a personal forecast. I answer all your comments down in the comment section. So if you do have any questions for your area, leave them down below. And by the way, this is going from December 1st to the last day of February because I'm using meteorological winter. I know some people use astronomical winter, but I use meteorological winter because I do meteorology. So here is the temperature anomaly forecast for the months of December, January, and February. I'm expecting slightly above average conditions for much of the southern tier of the United States, from California, Nevada, eastward into portions of the southeast. This is where I'm expecting it to be slightly above normal. So I don't think it'll be too crazy above normal. I don't think it'll be too outstanding. And I do think you will have a couple days where it's below normal. But I think as a whole, it might be a degree or two above normal. Now, for this area in southern Louisiana, southern Texas, southern New Mexico, much of Arizona, southern Nevada, and portions of California there, this is where I'm expecting moderately above average temperatures. And this is where I think it's going to be even warmer than in this yellow region, so probably on the order of about 2 or more degrees above normal for the entire winter season from December to February. And even these regions will get into some of the cold in some time periods, but it's probably going to be a lot more warm air than there will be cold air this winter. Now here's a below average region, and this is drastically changed. Now this has shifted a lot further east, and this is mainly influenced by what I'm seeing in the month of December. Originally I was thinking December might actually be a warmer than normal month, as many Decembers have recently been, and then it might switch over to some colder conditions. But what I'm finding now is that within a lot of these shorter term models, they're actually going for a much colder than normal and snowier than normal December, and this might drastically skew your winter totals, because a warmer than normal December usually, of course, would lead to a warmer than normal winter and a less snowy winter on many occasions. If you look at many different data sets through the eastern United States, that is really something that you see. When you take a below average December, it usually leads to a below average winter. So when you get in in terms of snowfall, when you get an above average snowfall year or above average snowfall December, you usually get an above average snowfall winter as a whole. So having a cold December is going to drastically change your entire winter outlook, and because of December being so forecasted to be so cold, I do think that's going to really change your winter forecast, and you're seeing that reflected right now. Now here is that slightly below average region from the Rockies eastward through the Great Plains into the Great Lakes, portions of the Ohio Valley, and then in through the northern and central Appalachians, and then into the mid-Atlantic and northeast. This is where I'm expecting some slightly below normal conditions, so I do think it'll be colder in these regions. Now, If you live in this darker blue region within portions of the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast, this is where I think it'll be coldest, and I think this is where that colder will probably stick around for a little bit longer. Now, also, this has changed. That moderately below average area shifted from portions of the Midwest a lot further east into the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast. So before it was kind of more into the Dakotas, Nebraska, Montana, it really has shifted a lot further east, and that's what I've seen in a lot of these longer term models, and also in just some of the indications that I'm getting from different oscillations that I'm looking at. Now, here's that precipitation outlook, and then we're gonna look at that overall forecast as well as the snowfall forecast. Don't forget about that. That'll be coming up in just one moment. So again, this is going from December to February. Below average precipitation. This is in the form of both rain and snowfall for portions of the coastal southeast down through portions of the Gulf states and then into portions of the southwestern United States. This is where I'm expecting slightly drier than normal conditions, and then if you live a little bit further south in portions of the Gulf states and then through portions of the southern Four Corners and into parts of Nevada and California, that's why I'm looking at moderately below average conditions for this winter, and this is where I think it'll be a lot drier than normal, and I think it'll be really noticeable. I think because this southern jet stream really isn't going to be existent because of the La Nina that I have, this is really going to drive the precipitation forecast. And usually I use La Nina and El Nino or Enso neutral to figure out what the precipitation outlook is going to be like, because those dictate the jet stream, and the jet stream greatly dictates the precipitation outlook. And so that's what I usually mainly use the La Nina, El Nino, Enso neutral to look at. So right now we're in a La Nina. In La Ninas, you don't have a southern jet stream, and that's going to really hurt your drought season, because you've already seen a lot of drought for these areas, and that's only going to continue, unfortunately, as we get into the winter. Now, here's the above average precipitation region, and this spans from portions of the Northeast through the Great Lakes into the Midwest, and then through the Northern Rockies and into the Northwest. This is where I'm expecting some more precipitation than normal in both the forms of rain and snow for these regions, and then moderately above average for portions of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and into the interior Northeast, as well as portions of the coastal Northwest. That's where I'm looking at even wetter than normal conditions for those regions and snowier than normal conditions, depending on what type of precipitation you're going to predominantly see. And here's your snowfall forecast. Then we'll look at your overall forecast at the end of the video. Slightly below average snowfall expected if you do get any snowfall, because I know a lot of these areas really don't see snowfall. So this is only applying to the areas that will typically see snowfall, and if you don't typically see snowfall every year, maybe this makes it a little bit less likely that this is going to be the year that you would see snowfall. For example, if you live in portions of southern Texas, they get snow once every about 5 to 10 years. So maybe this makes it a lot less likely that this is one of those 10 years, or this is that 1 out of 10 chance that you get snowfall. So this is just going to make it a little bit less likely that you would see snowfall this year, because a lot of these areas actually don't average any snowfall. Now, moderately below average snowfall for portions of California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. This is where I think it'll be even drier and less snowy than normal. Now, here's where I'm expecting more snow than normal, and this includes portions of the Midwest down through the Central Plains into the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and then back through much of the Northeast, except for that coastal corridor, and that's going to be a big area that is still a little bit undecided for me. I know a lot of my viewers live within that area, and this is going to be a tricky one, because we really need to figure out whether this storm track is going to be predominantly up the Appalachian Mountains, or whether it's going to kind of cut across the Appalachian Mountains and then down into the Mid-Atlantic, in which case many areas in the coastal Northeast would actually get a pretty good winter. So that's going to be the big thing that I'm going to try and figure out as we get into December. After we pass December, as we get to the end of December, we're going to have a good idea of what our storm track is, just based on the month of December. So we really have to wait and see until December, and then we'll have a good outlook as to what's going to happen in January and February. Now, here's where I'm expecting even more above average snowfall, and this is going to be for portions of the western Northeast, I guess you could say, and then portions of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. This is where I'm expecting moderately above average snowfall, and I think it's going to be a fairly good winter for these areas. And typically in a La Nina year, you do see some really good storm tracks for these regions where you can get quite a bit of snowfall out of some of these storms, and we've already seen many storms produce some snowfall for some of these regions. So it wouldn't be too shocking to see that sort of storm continue into the winter months. Now, here's the overall forecast, and let's start decoding what each different color means. Let's start from west to east. Cool and wet conditions for that green region in portions of the northwest. This is where I think, again, it'll be cool and wet. It's going to be below average temperatures, most likely, above average precipitation. It's really not going to be a very nice pattern. Even some of the Cascades and the mountain ranges in the northwest will probably be more cool and snowy just because of their elevation. So it's going to be very elevation dependent for those regions. Mountain snow expected, and I think this is going to really vary depending on where in the Rockies you are. The southern Rockies don't expect too much snowfall, and then in the central and northern Rockies, I would say it's probably going to be near normal to maybe even slightly above normal snowfall for this winter season. Now, I'm expecting warmer than normal conditions for this area in portions of the southwest, from portions of New Mexico, Arizona, into portions of Utah, Nevada, and northern California. This is where I'm expecting warmer than normal conditions. And then for portions of the very far southwestern United States, this is where I'm expecting warm and dry conditions to persist. I think it's going to be a combination of those dry conditions with those warm conditions, and they'll add up to be a fairly mild winter. And then as you get further to the north, cold at times for portions of the west north central United States. So for portions of the western Dakotas, western Nebraska, and then up the spine of the Rockies, that's where I'm expecting cold at times. So it's not going to be all the time, but I think eventually you will get into a pattern where every couple of weeks you get a big cold shot, and it'll kind of be a fairly persistent and very regular pattern. Now, Arctic blasts are expected for portions of the Midwest, your typical Arctic invasions, and I think the polar vortex will dip in a little bit more than what it typically does, and you'll get a couple days where you are below zero for some of those regions. So just keep your eye on that, and I'll be tracking all of those Arctic blasts on my channel. Chilly conditions, so it's not going to be as cold, but it also won't be warm in these regions. So it's going to be kind of right in the middle. I think it'll tilt a little bit below average for many of these areas from Colorado eastward into Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri there. Back and forth conditions for portions of Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. This is where I think it's going to go from cold to warm and dry to wet, and I think it's just going to be kind of all over the place for these regions. Mild and dry conditions for portions of the Gulf Coast and the coastal southeast. This is where I'm expecting it to be both warmer than normal and drier than normal. Combine that together. I don't think it'll be as dry or as mild as that area in the southwest, but I do think it'll still be milder and drier. You will get into some of those colder shots, especially as you get into December. I think it'll thaw out into January. It'll get a little bit warmer, and then February I think will come back with a little bit more of a vengeance, and I think it'll be a little bit colder in February. Now, a mix and icy zone for portions of the mid-Atlantic and then into the mid-South, where I'm expecting a wintry mix icy zone general region to set up there, where I think a lot of your storm tracks will go through here, and you might get some ice to set up throughout these regions. So this is going to be kind of your winter battle zone, or whatever you want to term it. This is where you're going to be in between the rain and the snow, and you're going to be transitioning through much of the winter, where you're going to be going from, again, rain to snow with many of these winter storms. Worst of winter for this region in the white for portions of the Great Lakes. This is where I'm expecting it to be very snowy and also fairly cold for the winter, and I think this might be a fairly potent winter in terms of both cold and snow. More lake effect snow for this region, fairly self-explanatory. Along the Great Lakes, we have very warm lake effect waters right now, and it might cool down a little bit as you get into December with that colder period, but usually warm lakes actually help lake effect because because if you think about it, if you have ice over the lakes, you can't pull up as much moisture to make those bands of lake effect. When you have open lakes, you don't have any ice on the lakes. That's where you really thrive with the lake effect, and that's why actually November and December can actually be a fairly good month for lake effect. January and February, when it's too cold, the lakes are frozen, usually aren't as good for lake effect. So we're seeing very warm lakes right now because of that very warm summer. So it's going to take a while for that to get down to the freezing mark, and then I think once it gets to the freezing mark, it's already going to be spring by that point, and it'll start to warm up again. So I think you will have more lake effect snow in these regions, and then finally snowy at times for this area from the Appalachians eastward into portions of the Northeast. This is where I think you'll have periods where it's going to be snowy and cold, and then it goes to a milder pattern, and then snowy again. So it's going to be kind of all over the place, kind of like that yellow region in the south central United States, except I think it'll be colder and snowier than those regions. And definitely compared to last winter, I think this is going to feel like a very snowy winter, even though it might end up just being near average, because compared to last winter, anything would be better than that for many of you guys who like cold and snow. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I'll answer them. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.